Alrighty, Gary Larsen, dude, it's been a while. I can't thank you enough for your time. I'm going to start by saying that. Thanks for joining me on the Musician's Mentor podcast. You're kind of like a guinea pig for me because, I usually release these things purely as audio, as we were just discussing. But recently, I've had a few people say that like I should go video, and I think you're going to be the first. We'll
Oh
see
my,
what happens. So the pressure's on, and we're going to start this how I start them all. If you wouldn't mind, Gary, obviously during my introduction post our interview, I'll tell people all about you and Larsen Music and Royal Teeth and you as a songwriter and a musician, etc., etc., etc. But what I always do is I ask my guests to tell the world who they are. So tell us who Gary Larsen is. Tell us a little bit about where you're at in your musical journey now, and just so that they get a bit of an insight as to who you are during this interview, during today, this time, etc., etc., etc.
yeah. Well, as of today, I am a full-time stay-at-home dad that writes music during naps and bedtime. That's kind of that's my today, you know. Um, yeah, I mean that's pretty much what it is. So my wife Nora and I were in a band called Royal Teeth for I stink with dates and times, so just bear with me. A lot of it's probably going to be like loose, roughly a decade. So somewhere around 2010, I think we really locked in the band, and around 2011, I want to say we put out our first EP and pretty much shut it down when COVID lockdown happened. That was kind of like I think that was kind of like the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, of the band. We never actually broke up, so there's always the odd gig that could happen. We haven't like shut the door on that. We're all still very close. Um, but actually, we did play one jazz. I think our final jazz fest because Effie was a tiny, tiny baby sleeping. So that was her first gig. That's our daughter Effie. Um, anyways, so yeah, that was kind of that was like the big chunk of my musical life for gosh, yeah, for over 10 years. I played with buddies before then, just garage bands, things like that for fun. And it was pretty much my career. My whole life in a big part of my identity was revolved around that band and touring and being we were never huge by any means, but we made a living off of it, and that was sort of that was the big adjustment up till this point in time of shutting that down after COVID, and obviously that was a weird enough time, and then having our first daughter, and then figuring out where I sort of go from there as far as myself, and keeping my creativity alive, so to speak. So I'm just now starting to get to a place where I'm feeling good about putting stuff back out into the world outside of the casual thing here or there. And so yeah, I'm at a point now where I'm kind of ready to jump back in the water, I guess.
It's amazing, man. And I love the fact that it's real life, like writing in between naps and bedtime and stuff like that. It's stuff that people don't talk about. And you have to because like you are a very creative guy. I love your music, man. It's spectacular. And yeah, you said there, oh, we weren't huge by any means. Well, by many means you were. I mean, what's the big song you guys had? Wild?
Yeah.
That's got over 10 million streams. You've had a bunch of sync things. We'll talk about all of that. You were signed. We'll talk about that. So yeah, yeah, exactly. And like to
That's a
to
good
a,
that thing. It depends on how you want to look at it, right?
I couldn't agree more. But to a lot of people, that's like that's the pot of gold over the rainbow. So let's backtrack a little. Talk to me about where you grew up. I think that was Slidell. I could be
Yep.
wrong. But tell me about growing up there. Were you always into music? And if not, how did you personally become involved with music?
Yeah, for me it was pretty boring and you're nothing too crazy. I mean, I did grow up in Slidell, little suburb kind of life. And yeah, I just picked it up. It was for me, it was mostly just an avenue to hang out with friends. It was like a reason to get friends together to do something, and I'm sure most people have done this. You just I remember I remember a friend of mine had a guitar and another friend of mine had drums. So I was like, well, I guess I'll get a bass. And so I just got a bass just so I could hang out with them in their garage and play terrible music. And we were so bad. I think at that point in time, we were going through our pop punk phase. So we were trying to sound like Blink 182 and all that kind of stuff. And then, so it was something I always liked and something I was always interested in, but I was still young enough where it was mostly just friend oriented. It was just to get together and stuff. Um, but now that I think back, I'm sure we talked about, oh, when we go on tour, but like we weren't going to go on tour, but I think it became more of a reality as I'm trying to remember how old I was. I must have been like 16, 17 ish when, I started to kind of really think about it like, oh, uh, that could be like the best job in the world. And I remember going to see, uh, I went to the House of Blues and I saw Kevin Devine, Manchester Orchestra, and Brand New play.
Amazing.
And I had started watching their YouTube videos of them on tour, hanging out. They weren't even fancy videos. Just like it wasn't professionally done. It was just them recording themselves hanging out. And I just fell in love with that. And I think now that I think about it, it goes back to that same idea. I think just the idea of being with your friends, being with your buddies, and your job is just to like make music and play it for people was just so appealing to me. Um, so the music was almost the secondary part of it. It was just like that was the thing you did to get the camaraderie. And and that was when I was like, oh, that's what I want to do. And it became more of like a little more of an obsession or something I was like very interested in. And it really even wasn't even about the kind of music or the style, because at that time, then I went into my angsty phase and I wanted to scream and yell and do the kind of emo-ish stuff. I was really into that for a minute. And then by the time I moved to Lafayette to start what would become Royalty, it was kind of like a folky thing a little bit, and then that wasn't really becoming anything. And then a buddy of mine, who eventually became our guitar player, Thomas, came over, and we were going to do a show without a drummer. It was just me and my friend Josh Wells, who was in the band also for a few years, and he's like, I got this drum machine, I could do some beats and stuff. And then we heard these electronics, and we were like, okay, well, let's do a pop band. That's fun. And then that was the thing that sort of, so it was always just like what was available to us, what was going to be exciting and fun at the time. And that became, what Royalty eventually was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the move to Lafayette, because obviously, if you live within Louisiana, Slidell to Lafayette, it's doable. It's not that far.
Couple
But
hours. Yeah.
but with that being said, it's still a whole another town away, a few hours, like you just mentioned. And to some people, the commitment that that takes to pack up everything you know and that's sort of familiar to you and your surroundings and relocate, if you will,
Sure.
that's like a big step, you know? I mean, obviously, it's not necessarily like, you hear these stories, guy in small town moves to
Yeah.
like LA and like
Right.
blows up and becomes whoever, right? Like,
Yeah. Not
but
quite.
but on a sort of different scale, it is, right?
Yeah.
You're still moving, you're still leaving home. So I get it. You've briefly mentioned you were a bunch of buddies, you were friends, you were kind of just like doing your thing. But talk to me about your mindset in regards to making that move.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple people on the show from Lafayette. They've spoken to me about the scene there.
Right.
What was your experience in that scene, if you will?
Yeah. Okay. So with the time when I made that move, Royalty wasn't a thing yet. I was in my other band, which was I have the nuts to prove it. We were called The Dead and the Postponed, so that's pretty angsty right there. And also I think it's important to note, like I must have been 19 maybe or something, 18, 19, 20. I was in that area. So I think just naturally, like I was at a place of needing to like something new. I think most people at that age are you're kind of looking for whatever that journey is of whatever it is you want to do. And um, I was living at a house in Slidell that my dad owned, and me and three friends were like renting it from him. And the band I was in wasn't doing anything. My girlfriend at the time and I just broke up. So I was at a place where I was like, I need something, I need a change. And I had become friends with Josh Wells, who at the time was in a band called Oh Juliet, who were more established in the local scene. They were doing like bigger shows, and they were kind of where I wanted to be. Um, and I had made friends with him, and he basically just let it. He kind of took a liking to me, and he was like, "Hey, dude, just come over here, and we'll like start a band. We'll do it." And once he said that, I was like, "Oh, that's easy. I'll do that." Like I'll if I could start a band with somebody that actually plays bigger gigs and kind of gets the, I felt like I didn't have that in Slidell, where it just felt very like we would talk about it, but not really do it. And those were people that were in a scene that knew what it took to like play good gigs, to like just that next level, I guess. And so that was very appealing. And then he offered me to like stay with him, which was very, I guess, when I think back, I'm like, that's kind of strange, but I guess he just thought I was safe. I guess he assumed I was okay. Maybe they had a little kid at the time, him and his wife, and it was just like it was crazy. But I just moved in with them, and we started doing the band. And so I think at the time it felt like a big deal, but it was like a really exciting big deal. So there wasn't that like. See, now at this stage of my life, a move like that would probably be a lot more challenging and difficult in different ways. But at the time, it was just like I needed something, so it was much easier to just dive into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How important do you think it is finding your tribe, if you will? You hear that phrase. It
Yeah.
sounds to me like you found your tribe, like you kind of, I don't know how the relationship formed or how you guys became friends, etc. But something obviously felt right enough for you to make that move.
Yeah. I mean, I speaking of that, I basically stole that band. I like to joke about that, which I didn't. But that band, O Juliet, was they were kind of ending, at the same time. But the other, our drummer, Josh Hefner, was the drummer of O Juliet. Josh Wells was the bass player in O Juliet. Uh, you know, uh, this Andrew Poe was the keyboard player in O Juliet. So, and Thomas was so it's like all of those guys were basically in that band, and then just eventually kind of morphed into royalty. But yeah, I think finding your tribe or your people, I mean, honestly, I think that's everything. That's like, that is one of the biggest, I think that's one of the biggest steps that either holds you back or pushes you forward, honestly. Because, not to jump forward now, but, you know, I've been doing so much of this writing for what I'm doing now alone. And we could talk a little bit about why that's good. And I do feel like that's helped me kind of move forward as like a songwriter and stuff. But the biggest hurdle that's so obvious now is not having the team that I used to have to sort of lean on in every other aspect of this. And once because and even the best creators and songwriters or whatever, you can only do so much before you hit your own little creative wall or something. And you just need, even if it's just perspective, or even if it's just someone to talk to or bounce an idea off, sometimes just hearing yourself say something out loud to
Yeah.
somebody, immediately go, I shouldn't have done that. That was a bad decision. But in your head, somehow you convinced yourself that it maybe was okay. And so you need that. You need those people that kind of keep it, uh, kind of lean on when maybe you're not at your best, or maybe you kind of inspire an idea. It's just like, we're always just like kicking a can across, a little further, and sometimes that little thing someone else does just helps you in that one way you maybe hadn't thought of before. So, and I'm kind of speaking from a creative aspect, but even in the other areas too, just, from keeping your morale high or, feeling good. I mean, connecting with the people you want to do this with. And I can tell you from experience, once it becomes a career and a lifestyle, it's a whole new relationship and a whole new set of difficulties and challenges. So you really want to like the people that you're stinking up a van with on your shitty days when you don't want to talk to anybody, because those are going to be the people that forgive you for being an
Yeah.
asshole. So yeah, I really think that's like so much of the goal is to find your people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, pretty quickly, royalty go on to do really well. I mean, you work with some name kind of producers. You sign with Dangerbird Records. You signed 3 times. I mean, you mentioned that previously. We can talk about that if you like. But I mean, you pivot quickly forward, and that's quite amazing to see because some bands take. They say it takes a decade, right, for a band to like really start making motions. But you guys make motions within like a 2, 3 year period, which is incredible.
Yeah.
I want to know 2 things here. And of course, we can talk about more than just those, but these are the 2 questions I had in mind. One, what was your experience being on a label?
Um. Hmm.
And we can talk about good and bad. I mean, whatever
Yeah.
you prefer, you know?
Well, yeah. Yeah. No. It's both. There's ups and downs. It's such a broad kind of. It feels like such a broad question. I'm trying to think of how to like summarize it, which is it's difficult to do um, because yeah, we've kind of been through different variations of it. I feel like in a way we've sort of done it all, except not entirely. But yeah, so at the beginning it was great. It was exciting, and I remember I remember when it was like really hot, and you could tell, like everyone could just kind of tell whatever this was working, and so it was more just like a hang on and like hope for the best kind of thing for me at least. Um, where I remember we did a South by Southwest. It must have been our like second or third, maybe it was our first. I'm trying to think back. It was first, second, or third one where it was like uh, there was a lot of attention, and you could like we were taking meetings and getting free lunches from labels, and they were just interested to talk to you. And not everyone gave an offer, but it was just that vibe of like there's something swirling around.
Yeah.
And I remember, there was a question for us: do we try to just go for the huge swing with what we have now and try to push to make a deal with a major and just see if that, or do we um, put more interest in the independent labels and kind of go for a more like groundswell, like kind of build. And uh, and we decided to go with the indie, which was Dangerbird at the time. And for a while, it was great. It was. I remember feeling good about the team and everybody, and but how these things go. It all kind of changes quickly and randomly. So at the beginning, there are no complaints. You're feeling good. And then also it doesn't hurt that the song that got popular, which is Wild, was already doing stuff before all of this. So it gives you a little something to stand on, so to
Yeah.
speak, right? It wasn't so much like we've never put out a song, but we think we have one that might do well. So the labels kind of, it was just like already on commercials and stuff. And I think that was our bargaining chip that,
Yeah.
and we had signed a publishing deal that was basically gave us, that was how we were able to quit our jobs because it was a good amount of money, and we were smart about it. We didn't just to divvy it up and say go have fun. We kept it small and like made it periodically, and sort of became our sort of a net to kind of keep the band alive.
Yeah.
And all that thanks to, got to give Josh Hefner and our manager at the time, Bert Landry, credit for that, because those guys were smart. And they without them, the band would have died so many years sooner. I guarantee it. Like if I was the one making the decisions, it would not. but but yeah, just as things happen, Dangerbird went through this. Basically, they like split in half, where like certain people left, and it was this whole thing. And then the people we had signed with weren't there, but they wanted to keep us. and it gets complicated, but basically, without any of the details, they wanted us to sign like a long form contract, and we wouldn't do it
Mm.
because it felt unsteady, everything, and we felt a little weird about it. And obviously, they wanted that because it kind of was a. I get why they wanted us to, because there was a little bit of holes in the short form that gave us a little wiggle room.
Yeah,
Uh, but we were about like a week or two away from single two coming out, and they pulled the plug because they're like, if you're not going to sign this, then we're not going to do it.
standard.
So we used, unfortunately, a lot of the money from our publishing deal to just buy ourselves out of it. We just bought ourselves out of our contract, and ended that. And then shortly after that, we got an offer for Elektra Records, which was great. And before that even became a thing, like immediately, the guy that signed us left, got let go. And so then we were left in a similar situation where these people don't know who we are because they didn't bring us on. And I think we got an email saying something along the lines of, we can maybe look back at this in another year or two when we have some space.
Mm.
And we can't, what are we going to do for a year? Or, like we at the time, we weren't self-sustained enough to like say, okay, sure, we'll just be floating around for a couple of years and make this thing work. So that was that. Before that even got started, that fell apart. And then I remember doing a tour, and feeling at the time that this was probably it, like probably the last tour, because we were independent at the time and we hadn't told anybody. Obviously, it's not really a thing you make a post about. Like, hey,
Yeah.
you remember that Elektra thing we posted about? uh, so I just remember, I think we were in New York, and our manager Bert said that some people were coming to the show, and I think in my head I was a little bit like, okay, whatever. And that was, but it was the people from Round Hill Records from Nashville, and they saw the show, and we had a dinner with them after, and I think I just played it extra cool because I didn't know that they were like interested in signing us, and maybe I charmed them. I don't know, but they liked the band and they gave us a shot, and then we did our final release with them, and they were all great. They were all cool, good vibes all around. Just I feel like the we were kind of at a point where I feel like we were a little bit had been through it, sort of the ups and downs, and I think that had sort of affected us in ways that maybe we didn't realize at the time. I feel like
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just I liked the music we did, but it was just like I don't think it was our best in some ways, and I just think that we were kind of we were a little bit hesitant to like really jump at it like we had done in the past. Like I remember us being a little hesitant to do certain tours or certain things, and I think that created a little bit of tension because we were getting older, and I don't know. It wasn't a perfect fit, and so by the time that cycle had wrapped up, that was it. And so it wasn't like a big falling out. It was just like we had done our
Yeah.
album cycle, and then that had kind of concluded, and we just didn't do another. And that was kind of the culmination of our of our label journey. So I don't know. I'd say overall, I mean, I don't have any bitter or bad feelings or anything like that, but I've definitely learned some lessons, and as far as like friends versus work friends and associates, and I
Yeah.
mean, definitely a couple of the maybe got a little too attached, thinking like, oh, we're friends, and then it's like, oh no, we're not like friends, like not.
Yeah.
I was a little bit charmed, I think, you know. So that was definitely one lesson that I feel like has made its way into my life now, where there's a little bit of perceived caution as far as that goes. Because when you're so young, I think I was 21 when the band really started moving. It's so easy to get taken advantage of in little ways that you don't realize.
Yeah.
Um, but all in all, I think I look back at it like these are just people like us that are just trying to keep a job and trying to figure this thing out and make it work. Um, so I don't really hold too many grudges as far as it, but I do feel like the way where we are now with music, I don't know if I would, you know, labels are a whole different conversation. I feel like than it was even then, even just that 10 years ago or whatever. It's a whole different kind of music world now. So the
Yeah.
conversation working with a label, it would be entirely different than the one we had back then.
Well, that leads me to question two. How important, if at all, do you think labels are for new artists or bands to break now?
I think it's entirely on the situation. I don't think like I think maybe back then we could have said like this is always generally the best way, but occasionally somebody independent might break through the noise and like make it work. But I feel like now so many people are making it work on their own, and that's become kind of the norm. That yeah, it's definitely less important for sure. It's definitely not nearly as crucial as it used to be. But yeah, of course, for some people, if it's the right team that really believes in the product and there's that trust and there's that passion behind it, absolutely having those people is a great thing, you know.
Yeah,
So it feels wrong to say like, no, they're who cares about labels because that's I think it would be silly to have that kind of like get off my lawn mentality.
I agree.
Um, but necessary, no, no. I mean, you're seeing every day people figuring out a way to like make themselves become a big deal enough where offers are flying in for them and they have that kind of control. So then they can decide like, do I want to split that up and figure this out, or do I have, you know? So I really think kind of like goes back to at the very beginning, finding your tribe, finding your people. So if there's that trust in a team there that you believe in and that believes in you, if it's a label, great. If it's not a label, then great. You know, even better,
Yeah.
honestly, and you keep more money. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So there's no, these days, man, there's just no one. Maybe there never has been, but especially more now than ever. Things are more all over the place in a way where there's no one way to do this, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree, man. And it's interesting because it's like obviously there are variables that need to be taken into account with all of these things, right?
Yeah.
But like you say, so many guys are breaking through now without, and then you know, on the other side of that, you see some artists who are massive and are with. So it's like, I couldn't agree
Yeah.
more, man. Just do what you think is right for you. Trust your gut, right? It's no different to anything else. Just trust your gut. And if you're lucky enough to have a couple smart people around you that maybe do care about your interests, then that's always a smart thing to do. You know?
And also, I mean, there is something to be said with needing help, like you know, needing the right people and the help in certain ways. Where like I think sometimes people assume that because something you did went viral, that all of a sudden that means that you're going to sell a lot of tickets at your show, and that's not the truth. And I've seen
No,
that a lot where somebody that has a really strong online presence doesn't translate at all when it comes to things that are more practical and that you
yeah,
need to survive, you know, in the
yeah,
music world. So, you know, if that's something you can figure out yourself, great. But if you can't, that's a whole nother thing, you know. So it's tough to be like, yeah, just do it yourself, get popular online. That's then you won. Well, no, not really, you know. And if that's your goal to just be somebody that posts things and gets a lot, that's great. Then you did. But if you're trying to if you're thinking like as far as a career goes, then it's so much harder and more complicated than that. So in some level, you probably do need help. But once again, whether it's a label or somebody else, that's for you to decide for you and your clan, whatever that may be. You know,
yeah.
yeah,
Talk to me a little bit about touring. I mean, you guys were no strangers to touring. For anyone interested, just go read the royalty wiki page. You guys played some massive events. Were there any things that you personally would do while on the road to, you know, I'm not trying to like preach about staying healthy, but were there any things that you did to at least keep your sanity? Some guys go on walks, some guys do yoga, some guys find their local coffee shop in each town. It's like,
yeah.
and again, I get it. Early 20s, partying is a big thing of it. I was in bands that did the same thing. But maybe you were different. Maybe you were like so insightful already at that age that you were like, you know what, I'm in this town and they've got this statue and I'm gonna go visit that. Like, what was like your rituals if you had any?
I wouldn't say wise or anything, but anxious to get sick kept me healthy. Like I was very I think touring made me a bit of a germaphobe because my fear was to just get sick before a show. It became this thing that maybe became a problem where I was like for example, and I remember it to this day. If anyone were to ask me what's the best advice someone's given you on tour, I immediately know what it is, and it has nothing to do with music. It has to do with germs. Like that's where my brain goes. Where we were on tour with Rooney, and I said something about germs, and he was like, "Well, just a quick tip. Anytime you meet people, because you're always doing merch. Nora and I always did the merch after the show. He's like, you're always shaking hands and stuff, and you don't think about that stuff, and you're always like walking into green rooms, grabbing stuff with every. And he goes, just eat food with your non-dominant hand, and then you won't like stick your hands in your mouth so much. And I was like, I just never thought about that. So now, like to this day, if I'm eating food and I grab it, I always grab with my left hand because it touches things less. So as far as like staying healthy or being smart, I will say I drank less on tour, which is a little weird because same thing. I was like maybe a shot before the set to kind of loosen the nerves, but definitely not a lot of hangovers. We did joke that we were kind of a boring band because we were the kind of band that like tidied up after the green room. I think having Nora in the band helped a lot there. She she loved the time we had, but being in a touring band was not her dream. That was not her world. It was ours for sure. I like to say that she sort of kind of politely stumbled into the lifestyle where I'd seen a video of her singing, and we asked if she was interested. She thought it'd be fun, and then like you said, in a surprisingly short amount of time, it was a real possibility that we could quit our jobs and do it. So she was kind of just like, okay, but I don't know if we've done a tour where when we were setting up to leave and like accepting it, that she didn't at least cry for a day about it, to have to leave and to go, and but I will say, not to like throw her under the bus or anything, but no, she stepped. I mean, every time we left, she was amazing. Like she really stepped it up and like was awesome to tour with. But I think just that feeling of like, I gotta leave my things, I gotta go, I gotta live
Yeah.
in the van, I gotta figure, it's hard, it's not easy. And so I think for all of us, we had different things that kind of kept us grounded. Josh Hefner for a lot of our touring was studying for the bar. Like he was studying to become a music attorney, which he
Hmm.
is now. He's doing a great.
Amazing.
But he didn't like to drive, so he was like a forever co-pilot. He would always be he would always stay awake with whoever was driving. He would just be studying, do sound check, go to the back and study, play the show, go in the back and study. I mean, really rock star stuff. It's crazy. And then and Nora was art. She just always had a notebook, always had her pictures taken. So we did go if there was something to see, we would go like a museum or whatever. We did all that stuff just to kind of get out and keep busy. We loved going to coffee shops. I think for me it was always music oriented, so I would just kind of noodle with something in the corner, try to make stuff. Um, I think for the first half of my touring life, I didn't enjoy it as much as far as like the places we went to because yeah, I was a little bit of a little diva. I just like didn't want to get sick, so I just would stay in the hotel room or I'd hide away and this or that. And I will say the second half it changed where I was like, I think it became clear that this isn't a life that is guaranteed forever. I was like, I need to like enjoy this. I need to like see some of this. I became a lot more I participated a lot more if they were going somewhere or, just seeing the places we were going to outside of the gas stations and the interstates and the bar. Like the people are like, "Oh, you've been to this place?" I was like, "Yeah, well, not
I,
really."
I drove through it. You know.
One stinky bar it looked like or whatever. Um, so so yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone's. I used to like to drive. That was a thing. So that was what everyone kind of had a different system that kind of worked for them. And that was another good thing about after a while, once you get through those first few years, which the good thing is those first few years are exciting because it's all new. So we're cramming 6, 7 people in one hotel room, sleeping all on the floor, doing all that. But it's okay because it's new and it's exciting. And once we had got a few years behind us, that wasn't okay anymore. but I think you get better at doing it. You get better at figuring out how to save money, but also make yourself comfortable, figuring out how to give each other space, how to like you kind of just understand everyone's quirks
Yeah.
better. Um, and it was never easy per se, but I will say the last few years was probably the most pleasant. I think we had worked our way down from 6 members to 4, so that there was more space, and we had known each other for so long at that point. It just felt kind of more like family or something. So it was just I will say those last few years were probably the most easygoing as far as that life can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gary, what do you think for you personally was the hardest part about being in a band?
Man. I think for me, gosh, that's tough. I will say for me personally, maybe it's just the mental aspect of dealing with putting yourself out there for people. Um, I'm a bit of a it's hard to have thin skin and do this. And I'll be the first to admit, I'm not great when it comes to that stuff. I'm good at compartmentalizing it and kind of putting it somewhere else to keep going. Like I don't let it shut me down by any means, but it definitely leaves a mark when you're like in a position where you're vulnerable and in a world where it's so easy to tear you down because you don't like something. It never mattered to me if people like if it wasn't their thing, but that feeling of being like singled out anonymously and just torn down, it puts a little seed in your brain and it's hard to shake it off. It's hard to get that out. I would almost rather someone come up to me at the merch table and be like, I think your band sucks, but my girlfriend likes it. Like that's happened before. And I was like, cool, nice to meet you. And I kind of was okay with that for some reason because I could see you or something. But that sort of, especially with the online world and the way that kind of stuff goes, that used to mess with me a little bit. There's certain like you know, there's certain performances that I know maybe weren't my best that I can't go back and look at because I just know that there might be that comment or whatever. Like I don't I don't think I can go back and watch our American Idol one without feeling this to it. There's other ones that I'm okay with, but that it's that flow of it all. It's never ending. There's never a sense where you're good and you're totally comfortable or satisfied. There's always going to be that thing around the corner that stresses you out. And I really think the only reason I got through it is because it was what I truly loved and wanted to do. And so I always had that perspective of like, well, if I quit and I stop because it's difficult or it's stressing me out, then it's gone and I don't have that thing anymore. So like, always that perspective that this is my job to do this. And there are people that like this and it
Yeah.
does work. So why would I stop doing it for that? So that always helped me kind of put it in perspective. But if I would say the most constant change is just that feeling of uh, knowing that whatever you do is going to bring some kind of like negativity and judgment your way.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, even now, I'm much better about it now because you just go through it for so long, you grow and stuff. But even now, I put one of my new songs. I did like the Submit Hub thing to try to get on a couple playlists, which are kind of notoriously ruthless for the most part. Where there's a lot, it's a low success rate, and people love to give you their opinions. But I hadn't done it in a while, but I saw that there was a setting that was like be gentle, and I was like, I clicked that so fast. I was like, please be gentle. I've
Yeah.
done this in a while. Like I don't care I'm okay if you say no, but just don't be rude about it.
Well, that's the thing, I think it's the same with any form of entertainment, right? Like it's so easy for us to watch a movie and go, well, that was crap.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but like to then like step away for a second, even if you hated the movie, even if you completely hated it, like just think of the logistics involved, right? Like they had to like figure out everybody's diary for the crew and the cast and the everybody in the background that doesn't even get credit. And then they had to like shoot it and edit it and like, you know, put this thing together
Yeah.
that in some way, shape, or form is art, no different to music.
Yeah.
And
You're
then we, who had nothing to do with it, just watched it while sitting down in the comfort of our own homes, go, yeah, what a horrible movie. It's like it's human nature, but you are right, it has gotten worse. You know, everybody's an expert at everything now. And you know, talking of some of those like submission kind of playlists, they're very interesting. They're very interesting. I've been in bands that have used them. I've helped a couple of artists who don't know how to use them go through those things. And yeah, like some of the feedback you get is like brutal. And
yeah.
then you look at the, you know, I don't want to retaliate the same energy with these guys, but you look at some of their platforms and you go like, dude, like no one's even listening to your playlist. Like, what makes you so like king of the world to tell me that like you don't think the BPM of the song's quick enough or yeah, like it's kind of like I think there would be a much more positive way of doing it. You know,
Yeah.
like you said, like with the guy buying merch and saying, "Oh, I don't like you guys, but my girlfriend loves you." Like, okay, yeah, you probably didn't need to say that, but at least it's short, it's sweet, it's honest, and he bought a t-shirt. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, man. There's something. Everyone's just an expert now, and for me personally, the way I kind of try and deal with these situations, it's like, yes, we want people to hear our music, of course. You know, we say we write it for ourselves, and I do believe that. Like I find music very therapeutic, um, or creating music very therapeutic. It would be great if the whole world listened to it.
Yeah.
But when I'm creating nowadays, I kind of like do it from a, I think I'm a lot more realistic now
Yeah.
than what I was as like a 16-year-old. You know,
Same.
when I was 16, I'd write a song and be like, this is gonna be a hit, man. You know, now I write songs and I'm like, there's a chance that people aren't gonna like this line. And then I
Mm.
kind of like think about it for a bit and I'm like, but I like that line. And if I like that line, surely there's going to be a percentage of people, even if it's not a large percentage, that might like that line. And then I kind of make my decisions from that sort of point of view, but still trying to be as true to it as what I initially tried to be.
Yeah.
Because like, dude, like, man, I just think that like it's so easy. Negativity breeds negativity, right? And it's like you just need like two or three guys to go, yeah, this band sucks, and suddenly everyone's like, yeah, I hate that band. And it's been proven time and time again, like Nickelback and Creed and all these kinds of bands. Like these bands have sold millions of records. Limp
Right.
Bizkit. Like, man,
Yeah.
I meet so many people who hate Limp Bizkit, but who wasn't jamming to Limp Bizkit in 1999, you
I
know?
owned chocolate starfish and hot dog flavored water
It's
for sure.
amazing, dude. It's amazing. Anyway, nowadays you're releasing music as a solo act under the name Larsen Music. Let's talk about a few things here. Uh, we'll start with the creativity part since you touched on that already. Um, Now, I don't want to be redundant here because you briefly did touch on this, but talk to me about the differences between writing as a solo act versus writing as a band. Unless, of course, during your band time you were writing the songs anyway. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah. I mean, I did do a large chunk of the writing with royalty stuff, but yeah, it is a completely different dynamic because there's the here's my idea, and then you bounce it off, and then it kind of starts to ping pong around everybody, and that's what makes it the band, right? You know, with this, it's obviously not that. I do think a big, you know, there's so many little differences in the sense of just time, right? I mean, my perspective is so different. You know what I'm trying to do is it's all. I try not to. It's one of those things where I try not to think about it too much because then you kind of get too caught up. You just try to write, you know. But I do when I take a step back, I've noticed some differences where I think my brain was so in royal teeth mode for so long that anytime I wrote anything, it came from that place of like, uh, you know, I'm trying to like make this product that will please XYZ people that can go out and then work for this crowd or this. I was always like in that place. And especially it's a pop world, right? A pop. So that I think sometimes that's a bad thing where I think I was sometimes hurting my creativity in a way because I was always like in this place that I needed to like write like this to go to here, and I was always in that mindset, and I was trying to figure out how to let go of that and to just see what would happen if I just wrote for myself, kind of like what you were saying, where you make you're a little older, a little wiser, so you're making calculated decisions off of yourself rather than any other circumstances, you know. And I guess the thing that I feel helped this music more than ever is, for one, the fact that I am kind of on my own. The band's sort of doing its own thing. There's no label involved. There's no manager involved. I mean, I have no one to please other than myself, really. Um, so that's where I started, from ground, just from nothing. And I remember I was at a place where I was feeling a little bit restless with it, and I just was like, I wanted to do something to kind of get a spark going again, you know. And I thought it would be fun if I just made it up where I was like, for a week, I think it was a week. I'll when my daughter naps, I'll spend 2 hours and I'll just make something from scratch. So I won't go to my voice notes. I'll just make up something off the top of my head, and I'll work until it's done. Try to get a demo in a couple hours if I can. But then when that day's over, I just put it to the side, and then the next day I make another one. So I just did that every day for like 7 to 10 days or something. Um, I was just curious to see what I would do with that, like with that little amount of prep and thought, you know. Uh, but I really liked it, and I got kind of inspired by that place, and I liked some of the ideas that I was doing. So then that became, okay, well, let me keep going. And then I went back to some of those ideas, and then I got to this weird that evolved into basically me spending all of last year, um, spending every free second I had that was not, you know, that was nap time and right before bed, going through every song idea I had on my phone, every voice memo. I mean, I wanted to get that thing down to like one scroll. You know, not, you know how it goes with music people. You have voice memos that just go on for years of like things you forgot you did. And I was just like, you know what? I have nothing that I need to put out right now. I have no project, but I want to say that I got through everything. I almost looked at it like maybe this is the last thing I'll ever put out. Like maybe this is the last thing I do, because I don't know if there's an avenue for me with music anymore. Like I don't have a team. I don't know if I want to tour. Uh, so there's this thing in my brain where I was like, maybe this will be it. And if it is, let me get through all of it. Let me knock every creative idea I had out. And so I either deleted it if it was not good, or I made a demo out of it until I was pretty much done. And I ended up with, I thought it would be more actually. Maybe I'm psycho. I thought it would be more, but I ended up with somewhere around 40 to 50-ish songs, demos. And that was pretty much my whole year last year. Um, but man, I felt really good about it. I felt like my writing got better because it was just kind of, I don't know, it was a little easier to like mess around and to like kind of, I don't know, it was hard to explain, I guess, but I felt like there was no restraints or anything that and all those restraints I put on myself. You know, it wasn't like anyone doing it to me, but I don't know. I was able to just, and I think I was able to get a little more expressive because I was in a weird, anxious place at that point. Shortly after my daughter was born, I got real anxious all the time. I started having like panic attacks at random times. You know, changing a diaper, I would just be like, "Oof, I got to sit down for a second," you know. And I think just having a baby in COVID was weird. You know, scary. I was scared to go anywhere. I was scared to do anything.
Yeah.
Uh, it's your first time doing it, so a goopy eye freaks you out, or this, you know, you're just everything's this. I'm on a sense of like heightened, you know, all the time, and it's hard to make that go away. And I think I was sort of suppressing my depression for like my career being over, you know, with the band, you know, like that feeling of like this has been my life and my identity for so long, and now that's essentially done. And it was difficult to process that because at the same time, the best thing is my daughter in the world. So I'm having this like equally like best thing of my life, but also like dealing with this other thing that's like my whole creative identity kind of being lost or gone. And it's a tough thing to figure out, you know.
Yeah.
so naturally, I'm an even keeled guy. If you can't tell, I almost wish that I could just like get hysterical, wear it on my sleeve, and get it out of my system. I'd probably be a much healthier person. But what I do is I sort of tuck it away and I kind of deal with it and I kind of go on and like even not too high, not too low, which works great in like certain settings, but maybe not so much when you're dealing with like serious emotions. But I will say a lot of that came through. So this whole batch of songs is basically just a anxious guy kind of dealing with his 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 great life, but sort of dealing with all the complexities that just happen within all of that. So that's why Cloudy was the first song I put out, and it just made the most sense because that kind of sums it all up. Like I'm out here on this beautiful day, and I can't get out of my own way. I can't get out of my own head. And so I think being in that place kept me inspired, I will say. So once it almost gave me a theme, for a
Yeah.
second. For a second, it was just songs. Then it was an EP, and then I was like, maybe I'm doing an album. And then I was like, scratch all that. I'm just writing songs. I'm just gonna keep writing songs. For a minute, I was like, maybe this is like a concept album. Maybe because
Yeah.
everything was the same. It was all not the same topic, but it was all coming from that place. And so I really quickly realized that there was like a place I was at, and I think that helped because it helped me kind of focus in a little bit.
Yeah.
It like how it is when you're a writer that like can do anything. It's almost like scrolling Netflix and you just don't know where you want to go.
Yeah.
It's like that kind of is crippling. So once I found the place that I was like, it was working for me, then I was like, oh, hell yeah, like we're going now. And that was exciting.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's definitely more of a bummer than Royalty ever was. But I will say this is much more me. Honestly, like I'm not a bummer of a guy, but like I love music that's more kind of hits you in the gut a little more introspective, a little more gets you in the feels. Like my buddy and I used to love the songs where you just want to like put the headphones on and lay on the ground and just like close your eyes and listen. Like that kind of stuff is like my favorite stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm kind of excited to sort of go back there a little bit and play.
Dude, Cloudy is an awesome song. Just side note there. People should totally check it out. I'll put the link in the show notes. Also, I love the fact that it proves that, you know, you can have a great laugh and still deal with emotions. I think some people blur those lines sometimes.
Yeah,
And, you know, people are more than one dimension, so you can be, man, this is so cool, but that can set you off or whatever it is. It's like, I think it's great that you're willing to talk about it. Um, as an original music creator, have you got any opinions on AI and how you feel it may or may not potentially affect the creative arts?
yeah. Um, it's a hard. It's tough for me because I don't have a passionate answer for that, and I think part of it is because I'm not sure. Once again, my kind of, for better or for worse, my sort of even keeled nature. I'm like, well, I see this side, but I also see this side. I'm always doing that with stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's a part of me that doesn't love certain aspects of it. Obviously, right off the bat, you're kind of defensive. Like, okay, that's weird. That like essentially you could just make a song. Uh, but but I mean, I'm sure back in the day when programming came out and then when autotune came out, people were like, what the is going on? And now it's like you don't even think about those things when you're programming or tuning up a vocal real quick because you're thinking about the product and there's all this work that goes into the product. I kind of see AI working in a similar way down the line where like if you just use AI, I like to think that people will be able to sniff it out and kind of go, well, this is so abnormal and not natural. Because I will say, even in electronic music, no matter what music you play, the heart of it from a person making a thing, I think, is what people will ultimately grab onto. No matter what the style is, if somebody is giving, even if it's a party song, a fun song, or an emotional song, if somebody's making it with that intention and they succeed at that, I feel like that's what you grab. AI can't really do that, at least not right now. uh, so yeah, it can make something cool, it can make something quickly, but I like to think that people would be able to tell the difference for the most part. So if I'm being optimistic, you know, as a self-made artist, somebody in your room, if there's something you could do with AI to speed the process or to fix something as you go, as you're making something, okay, like I'm not gonna like draw that line like a hard no. Um, but yeah, it's a little, anything you don't know is a little scary right off the bat. You don't know where it's going to go. You don't know how it's going to take over. And if it were to like take things from people, that's not great. I don't love that. So like if you're look, I know some people look at it in forms of like, film and stuff, and maybe people aren't getting a job because they're using an AI to do their intro video or whatever. That's a
Yeah.
different conversation, and that's not for me to just, that's not my world. But if you can use it as a tool, who am I to say? I think some artists already are, and they're like trying to get ahead of it for the sake of saying, look, this is how you can use it. I think Timberland maybe is like using it or something. Is he one? So once again, I'd have to watch his. I don't know exactly. Like, I don't want to speak out of turn with that stuff, but yeah, I'm trying to be cautiously optimistic as to like what it would do, but at the same time, I'm definitely got my guard up for sure when it comes to that stuff. Because I don't know. I like to think that people would notice, and I like to think that on some level, I feel like more organic stuff is kind of getting back in style a little bit. So maybe that is like a retaliation to it as the ebbs and flows happen in music. Maybe people are noticing how easy it is for AI to kind of do stuff. So maybe people are in a like wanting to see the bare bones of a creator more than they
Yeah.
used to or something. Or maybe it's just me. I don't know, but I
No,
like to.
I think it's a pretty organic answer. I think you're actually you've got the right approach, right? Because we don't know
Yeah.
exactly what's going to happen. So like there's no point freaking out about it just yet.
Right.
But likewise to at least be maybe cautious, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Like far
It's
kind of
yeah,
poke.
yeah, like just keep it at sticks distance. Um, okay, I asked you what you thought the hardest part about being in a band was, but let's just slightly tweak that. This is my second last question for you, Gary. What do you think is the hardest part about actually being a musician or a creative, for lack of a different term, I suppose?
Um, the probably, I mean, I could apply the same answer, but honestly, I would say the most difficult thing is the lack of security. It's one thing when you're 20 to be broke, but you get to tour and you get to hang out with your friends and it's okay. But it's a different thing to be 35 and to be broke and to be, you know what I mean? Your life is in a different place. So, and that's it's hard as you get older because so many things in your life tend to sort of slow you down, right? Like I don't want to I don't want to leave my daughter for months and go on the road,
Yeah,
um, and I just want different things now. Yet at the same time, I want the music to be heard. I want to have opportunities. So all of those things create this really hard life to sustain or to figure out or to navigate. There's no, you know, and even if I was totally down to tour and totally down to like hire a band, it's still a whole grind to get that moving, get that going. And there's no guarantee that it's going to earn anything, that it's going to create any kind of substantial revenue. And then once you start talking about the revenue, well, then you got a whole other thing because we were just talking about making music for yourself and creating. Well, now you're not making music just for yourself anymore. You've got a whole team to play, So there's this whole, once you start that process, man, it's a whole thing that is really, really tough to navigate. I think the reason the band works so well so fast is that you hit that lightning in a bottle moment where the song just works. It's much easier to get everyone on board and get all that stuff sorted out when the song just works. So when Wild got played on that car commercial, and then it got on another ad, and then the label started sniffing around. Well, yeah, now everyone's on the same team. Everyone feels great. There's not a lot of hard conversations because it's working. You're
yeah,
just like, cool, let's just ride it. But when you don't have that, all of that, making all of that stuff work and making all that stuff come together to create a sustainable career is just not, that's not, almost non-existent at times. You've got to find your thing. Maybe your thing's touring. Maybe you make a lot of money off of gigs. Well, at least you can float on that and kind of slowly figure out the other stuff. Maybe your stuff is getting viral and being on the internet. but to put it all together and to make an actual job, an actual career, that is very, very difficult. And for some people, it's just out of the picture. It just depends, like what are you willing to do? What are you willing to sacrifice to make it happen? And then even if you're willing to do and sacrifice all of it, is what you have what people want right now? Is that the thing that's going to work? And there's so many things that have to work. So it's crazy when you think about it, how many people make it, because you got to think about how many people aren't
Yeah.
make it and won't. And then, those people that do make it, how long do they make it for? Because that's the thing too, is like you see all these people getting big, these moments and stuff, but how many people do it for 10 years? How many people do it for 20 years? It's not a sustainable job. It
Yeah.
really never been. And look, the greats stay because they're great, and it's awesome, and we do it because we love it. And obviously we would love to be great, but that there's only so many spots for that. The life has a funny way of working itself out. So as I've gotten older, I've definitely, I've never had that mindset where it's like, oh, we need to be like doing this at the top of this and that. No, I never really had that. It was always just like, wow, this is so cool that we get to do this. So for me, it was always just like, is there enough opportunities to keep this thing alive? So I'm really glad that I had that perspective early on. And yeah, my expectations have changed a lot. I'm trying to be realistic now. Like I'm essentially starting from zero. I'm starting over completely. I don't expect people to be like, oh, this is the guy from Royalties. Let's flock on over and like blow this thing up. Because it's not even the same thing anymore. And even think about bands you love. When you hear like a guy made a side project, it's cool, but it doesn't guarantee that project's success.
Totally.
So I'm just trying to say like maybe there's something here. But I'm trying not to think too much about the big picture of it now. I'm trying to like remember why I like doing this in the first place, and just take the next step, make the next step a good step, and just see what happens. And if at the end of this I release a bunch of songs and that's just that, then that's great. Then at least I got that out of my system. It helped me through a tough period in my life. And I'm okay with that. Now, if there's an avenue for it to do something, I probably would jump on it, because why not? Like let's go. Let's have, and make the most out of every opportunity, right? So I'm optimistic, but I'm not like expecting anything at this
Yeah.
point. Like I'm just trying to look at what's the next thing I could do and make that something that's worth it,
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
amazing, dude. Right, my last question might be a little redundant because you've given a lot of great insight here, but do you potentially have a piece of advice that you can offer up and coming musicians or even established musicians that has served you well? Either somebody told you said advice or you maybe figured it out along the way, or just good advice that you've received that maybe you think would be great to share.
Yeah. Anytime you're on tour, eat with your non-dominant hand. That way you get less germs. You get less. Boom, man. Okay. Now, trying to think of something more serious.
That is great advice, though, to be fair,
I love that we brought it back to that. Shout out, Rudy. Um, I don't know. I mean, it's a tough one. It's sometimes I feel weird giving tips and advice like I'm some sort of like, I'm just a dude just like you trying to figure, like I don't have answers if I, but I have seen friends and musicians along the way that I think get so caught up in the climb, or not so much the climb, they get so caught up in where they want to be that they're not enjoying the process enough. And being in a band that I did that for like half of it, where I wasn't really like enjoying it in the way that I wanted to, because I was so concerned about losing it or like not being at my best or this or that, whatever the reason may be. I guess sometimes when I see people doing that, it feels like a alarm go off in me where I'm like, man, look, this might be all you get. Like maybe all you get is the local festival circuit, a couple tours, 2 albums, and then your life goes somewhere else. It's not always a matter of are you good enough or are you not good enough. Just life is funny. Like you never know where you're going to end up or what you're going to do. Um, so I just try to like tell people like the boring grind of it all. sometimes is the best stuff if you allow it to be. I mean, when I think back on my time with the band, we've done some really cool things. We've played at some of my favorite festivals in the world. Well, at least in America. We didn't do any like outside. We did Canada, but that's it. But um, stuff I can really look back on and be like, wow, that's so cool that we like got to do that. And if you ask me now, like, what's the thing I miss the most about that life? It's not any of that. It's just like goofing off with your buddies backstage. It's the little things. It's the camaraderie of like, I'm traveling the world with my wife and my best friends. And I'm like, and my job today is to get in this room and to try to like write something. And like, maybe in that moment you're thinking about, you're like, my brain might be thinking about something else, whether it be something serious or dinner or whatever. But when I take a step back, I'm like, wow, it's so cool that like, I feel comfortable enough that like I'm insecure that my job is this cool thing that I get to do every day, or just that I get to be in this van making a fart joke with my buddies on the way to whatever. So those are the things that I look back on with the most. That's where I want to shed a tear a little bit, where I get the feels, and I'm like, oh, I miss that. So I just try to remind people that like that grind, that hustle along the way, that sharing a hotel room and doing this and that, like that, those are the things that you're gonna remember. Those are the things that you're gonna write songs about in a few years or whatever, those kind of moments and those interactions. So just cherish those, because if that's it, then at least you have something wonderful to talk about. And if that's just the next step into something greater, then the whole thing is just better. Then you just get the best experience possible. So just don't overlook the grind, the little moments along the way.
Amazing, dude. Listen, I can't thank you enough for your time. Wish you nothing but success for the future. This has been a lot of fun, man. I can't thank you enough. I can't wait to hear some more of the new music. And just keep creating, man. You're a creative dude. Just keep creating.
I think I'll try, if I can keep myself going. I'll try to do a song a month. That's kind of my goal. Like I'll try
Amazing.
putting out a song at the end of the month, and then I'll try to keep going. Probably till, I mean, I'll stop for Christmas. No one cares about December, so I'll probably shut it down in December and just keep going. So I'm hoping for a single a month for the rest of the year.
Wicked, man.
Yeah.
Peace.
Thank you, man.